Good evening. Welcome to a special Yuba-Sutter.LIVE report. I'm Ted Langdell. Tonight we look at rezoning West Linda, the Arboga Road corridor. West Linda, roughly 550 acres of west central Yuba County, just across the river from Marysville, a survivor of 2 major floods in the last 35 years, a community of low and moderate income people, most of whom live on what would be considered large lots, some nearly half an acre. Most of the people live in single-family residences on these large lots, which are generally zoned for single-family residences. Many of the lots have room to build more residences to increase the density of people per acre. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the Yuba County Supervisors will consider rezoning 140 West Linda parcels from single-family residential to medium-density residential. The parcels are in the neighborhood along Arboga Road, running south from Feather River Blvd to Erle Road and Pasado Avenue. The agenda item is number 36. We have links to the agenda and the relative materials, including a list of parcels that are being rezoned. The public can attend the meeting here, comment, ask questions during a public hearing, or participate and ask questions via Zoom, or see it right here on Yuba-Sutter.LIVE. Details are at the bottom of the information below the video that you're watching now. We spent more than an hour today talking with Yuba County's Planning Director, Kevin Perkins, today, unedited, so that we could bring it to you this evening. We're talking with Kevin Perkins. Kevin, what is your title with Yuba County Planning?
I am the planning manager with Yuba County.
And what does that mean?
So what the planning manager means is I am in charge of the Yuba County Planning Department, the staff. I supervise all the staff in the Yuba County Planning Department and also our housing and community development block grant program that we do run here at Yuba County. To kind of take a step back, Yuba County Community Development is made up of the Yuba County Building Department, the Public Works Department, the Environmental Health Department, the Code Enforcement Department, the Planning Department. And so each department kind of fills its role in community development, and the Planning Department is in charge of land use and what goes on, how properties are developed and what's allowed on properties, and anything related to that.
What is the goal of controlling or zoning areas and regulating land use? What's the purpose behind that, and what's a little bit of background on why it came to be?
The purpose behind it is for orderly development, is to ensure that consistent and orderly development among surrounding parcels, and to eliminate land uses like a nuclear power plant next to an apartment complex or a single family residential zoning district. The goal is to make sure that we have different uses that generate traffic, higher uses of traffic, or may make noise in areas that are away from land uses such as single family residential that could be sensitive to noise and could be sensitive to a lot of traffic going down a road. So that's kind of the ultimate goal with zoning, is to make sure there's a uniform development pattern.
So if you had to sum it up in one word, what word would you choose?
I would use consistency.
Okay. Does compatibility play a role in all
Yeah,
this?
Ted, that's a way better use of the word, compatibility. You got me on the spot on that one, and I wasn't as articulate as you.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. So the purpose behind the zoning that's proposed for West Linda, how big an area is this, and where does it go? It seems to be primarily on both sides of Arboga Road, but go ahead and give it a description and show us if you can.
I'll describe what.
Show us if you can.
Yeah, I will. Hold on. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
We can.
All right. So I'm going to zoom in really fast to try to make this a little bit easier to view.
Yes. This is rehearsal for, I guess, a presentation you'll be doing tomorrow during the board meeting.
Yeah, oops. It is, but I have this zoning map. This might be hard
Okay.
to see. Let me share my screen with a different something.
Application, your
Different
GIS
application.
application.
Yeah, we use Google Earth quite a bit here. Can you see my
Okay.
Google Earth?
It's coming up. There it is.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
So what we're seeking to do is right now we're seeking to make the zoning consistent and what is out on the street land use wise consistent with the zoning for a section of road on Arboga Avenue. The parameters of this are from Feather River Boulevard, which is where my pointer is up here to the north,
Yep.
down to Erle Road to the south.
And Pasado, yeah.
Yeah, and it's only affecting the properties that are immediately adjacent to
Arboga. And it goes as far west as what? Gledhill in some sections?
It just goes, frankly, the only properties that are affected by this, they have to have frontage along Arboga. So
okay.
If they don't have a frontage along Arboga, we didn't include them in this section.
Okay, well, I would point out that in the list that is provided as part of the packet for the board meeting, there's 140 parcels, and I did a sampling using the assessor's parcel map lookup. And a number of them are several parcels or more west of Arboga Road, and some of them are along Gledhill. So you may want to look at that again.
Yeah,
that's why
I'll double check on that.
Okay. And my point here is to get as much information for people as is available before the meeting. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right.
So I'd like to kind of describe what the existing zoning situation and the existing land use situation is on this section of Arboga Road. So this section of Arboga Road has, for the most part, it's about 50% has an existing zoning designation of medium density residential, which is our, is a zoning designation that allows for single family residential and multifamily residential up to a certain density. And we've had a number of developers and people, property owners over the past year contact our office interested in developing their properties into more residentially zoned or suitable uses, and it came to our attention that there are some sections of Arboga Road that don't have the existing multifamily residential zoning designation and are currently being utilized as multifamily residential land uses on the street, but have a single family residential zoning designation. And so what our intention is to make the zoning designation consistent on this entire street for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons would be, to allow more residential uses to potentially go on properties. Another reason, again, is the consistency, so that if there's any, one of the things that both the state has been kind of pushing down on local jurisdictions are to have more housing opportunities in their jurisdictions and to make housing easier in the process to have more housing easier. And this has, basically been kind of a state mandate. There's been a number of state laws that have been passed in the past few years that have been consistent with this. And, we want to make sure that we're doing our part to ensure that, we have infill opportunities where people can buy properties and add more units on them or develop new housing that might not exist. And
So how much of this relates to affordable housing? Because we're obviously an area that needs that, and prices are getting pushed up to the point where there are quite a few people who can't afford a house, and then they become homeless.
yeah, that's a really great question. And frankly, um, this rezone isn't going to. It's not going to mandate that housing be affordable. The goal of it is to increase the the amount of housing, which hopefully from a supply and demand point of view, that the more housing that we have, that'll relieve the rent increases that have been seen. Uh,
So it looks like some of the lots there are rather large. I noticed in checking parcel maps that some of these are a
but
third of an
this
acre,
actual rezoning,
pushing half an acre in terms of the ones
yeah,
that I was
and that's
looking at. You just muted yourself somehow.
and I'm really glad that these properties that are zoned single family residential, they're big parcels. They're half an acre, a third acre to an acre. And traditionally, what we've seen in Yuba County, when people haven't been able to utilize their property to add another residence or do something like that, there's been issues that have come up from a code enforcement issue with these larger parcels that have excess space, and sometimes they'll be used to have livestock on them, which isn't allowed by the zoning, or they end up being parcels that accumulate a lot of junk, trash, and debris. And or in the past, there were cannabis grows going on a lot of these larger parcels. And so it's our goal to give property owners the ability to do more on their property, and not just be stuck with a house up front and not being able to do anything else on the remainder half acre of their parcel. So that was a really good catch, Ted, to notice that these parcels are large in sense and could help accommodate more housing or the like.
So if people in an area, or for example, a developer comes in and says, hey, I think I would like to be able to utilize this for apartments or something like that, does the zoning that you're applying allow that level of density? And maybe you can be more specific about what the density is.
So the zoning would allow that type of density. And so the medium density residential zoning designation does allow single family residential as a principally permitted use. So the people who have single family residential homes on their property are not going to, if the board does move forward and adopt these proposed changes, it's not going to affect what they can do or can't do on their property. If they want to maintain their single family residence and do something like add a barn, a shop or an accessory structure, all of that's going to remain the same, because what they're allowed to do is still allowed to do in the single family residential zoning district. But what it will do is allow someone to add additional units on the property. Right now, the zoning is 8 to 17 dwelling units per acre in the medium density zoning designation. So as long as they could meet all the site design standards like setbacks of buildings, parking, landscape requirements, they could put additional units on their property. One thing that I do want to note, in terms of additional units, is the state in 2021 passed a law called SB 9. And I don't know how familiar you are, Ted, with SB 9, but what SB 9 did was it created a process for a landowner on any single family residentially zoned parcel to have by right the ability to add 4 units on their parcel and subdivide their parcel. So there would be 2 units on one of the parcels and 2 units on the other. So right now, in our single family residential zoning district, we allow 1 unit plus, an accessory dwelling unit, a second unit, that would be like a granny unit on a parcel by right, but that's it. With this new SB 9 law, the state is by state law already increasing the density in the single family residential zoning district. by adding up to 4 units on, any lot, as long as the lot's above 2,500 square feet.
So does that mean, does that include the 4 units include the existing unit if it stays, for example?
Yes, it would. And it's also creating a map process that's allowed by right, which is much different than the mapping process. If someone wanted to subdivide their property, that would happen, in a single family residential zoning district in the past. So previously, if I had a half an acre, for sake of discussion, if I had a half an acre parcel with a house on it, I wanted to subdivide it into 2 parcels and then put another house on the other parcel, there is a process, a tentative parcel map process that someone would have to go through. And as part of that process, we would notify neighbors of the project and let them know that their neighbor was intending on subdividing their property. We'd have to go through an environmental review process to ensure the subdivision met all the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. And then we would hold a public meeting, a public hearing, where a hearing body would vote yes or no on the subdivision. With SB 9, in the new rules in SB 9, they don't have to go through that process. If they want to subdivide their property into 2 lots, they can do that by right. And so they come in with a map to the county, they show that they meet the requirements of SB 9, and we have to ministerially or over the counter without discretion approve that map by right. And so, it's kind of thrown a monkey.
You broke up there. It's kind of thrown what?
Wrench into the traditional way.
Pick it up. Yeah, go ahead and pick it up at the very beginning of what you were saying.
Oh, okay. So what I was saying is, with SB 9 in this urban lot split, which is allowed by zoning right in SB 9, it's kind of thrown a monkey wrench into how traditionally properties would be subdivided. So now that if a property owner meets the intention and the requirements of SB 9, they can do that by right without going through a normal subdivision process, which would involve disclosure to the neighbors, a disclosure of environmental impacts, and a public hearing for neighbors to be able to air out any grievances that they would potentially have with the project. And so
for example, if you were in an area that had a septic system, was not able to connect to sewer like you can in Linda, and you had to depend on septic systems and wells, an environmental quality report would indicate whether or not that particular piece of land would have the capacity to deal with disposing of that amount of sewage?
Yes, that would all be discussed as part of that project. And
the normal process.
Yes, the normal process. Thank you for that.
And with this new process, that goes away?
Well, what goes away is the neighbors will not have the ability to question and ensure that any issues that they might have with a subdivision would go away. So still, to develop that site, if someone wanted to add new homes, our environmental health department would ensure that those homes, had the appropriate water and wastewater disposal system before they issued any building permits to that lot. However, all of that would be something that would be addressed, soils work for a subdivision as part of.
We lost your audio as part of
this. So what I was saying, Ted, and I apologize for my audio issue right now. I don't know what's going on with that.
Not a problem.
But normally all of the issues that you raised about is this parcel going to have adequate soils to be able to hold a soil to a septic system or room for a well, those would be addressed as part of the map process. still our environmental health department will address those before a building permit is issued, but it just still takes away from some of the public disclosure and the public discourse of a map. One big caveat that I do want to make clear to you and anyone listening to this is these urban lot splits only apply to areas that are designated by the US Census as urbanized areas. And so the last urbanized area census map that we have is from 2010 from the US Census, and the areas that are urbanized are considered Linda, Olivehurst, East Linda, West Linda, and Plumas Lake. So, anywhere in the foothill region or, the outside of, our traditional area where we have more urbanized growth in the county will still have to go through the older, process for subdivisions.
Okay. So with the rezoning here, that's not really going to apply after the rezoning is done, but this is done in a public process. One other question before we get off of that particular topic with the new SB rules that came in. Does environmental health look at what the neighboring properties have in terms of the sewage capacity and where those pipes and so forth are positioned, so that a new lot split with further use or increased use of a septic system as sewer disposal, waste disposal, do they look at how that's going to affect the neighboring properties?
Yes, they do. And, for the most part, Ted, most of our urbanized area is on sewer and water, either with OPUD or Linda County. But there are a couple of pocket areas in our urbanized area that still don't have sewer and water connections. And typically on all subdivisions or new homes that are proposing a well and septic, as part of that review process, the environmental health department looks at where the neighboring wells and septic systems are located. And, again, I don't know what the distances are off the top of my head, but there's a certain minimum distance that a well needs to be away from a septic system, or a septic system needs to be away from a well. And all of that is considered by our environmental health department before they, give conditions of approval on a map, or before they sign off on approval of a building permit in the case that a map wasn't needed and the lot already existed and someone was trying to build a house on that existing lot and they needed to drill a new well or put in a new septic system. As part of that review process, environmental health would absolutely make sure where the septic system is in relationship to neighboring septic systems and neighboring wells.
Okay, well, I think that answers that pretty much. Going back to what's happening in West Linda, the process begins with a public hearing tomorrow, or let's say Tuesday, the 25th at sometime after 9 a.m. Looks like it's positioned towards the back of the meeting. Probably won't happen until maybe 9:30, 9:45. But be watching the meeting here on Yuba-Sutter.LIVE, and if you want to participate, we will have a link to the Zoom meeting portion of that if you don't want to go to the County Government Center and speak up tomorrow if you have an interest in doing so. Anyway, there's a lot of land. If you look at this image that you have up on your screen, there's a lot of relatively large lots between Arboga Road and the railroad tracks on the east side, and then on the south, or on the what would be, I guess, southwest side, if you want to look at it east, west, and so forth, towards South Gledhill and North Gledhill Avenues off of Grand Avenue. How many of the lots that are along Gledhill are included in this? Because as I mentioned earlier, it looked as though there were a number of them, particularly if you get up into the smaller areas where you have J Street and K Street on either side of New Life Church. Looked like there were a number of lots that went several lots inward in that direction. And I'm just curious, because I know that what I was looking at seemed to start south of the commercially zoned lots that are along Feather River Blvd.
So one thing before I start, Ted, I do
Okay.
want to mention that the start of this process actually began in November with our planning commission. So we held a hearing with our planning commission on anytime there is a change in zone, a change in anything with our development code in terms of zoning or a change in the zoning map, we bring the item before our planning commission and thoroughly discuss the matter with our planning commission so they can make a recommendation to our board of supervisors. So we did hold a meeting with our planning commission in November. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but that was the start of the process, and we publicly noticed the process with the planning commission as we did publicly notice the process with the board of supervisors.
Okay.
A
A couple of questions relating to that. Were all of the property owners that have parcels that would be affected also notified?
No, all the property owners weren't notified. When you have a larger code change, similar to this, there isn't a requirement to notify all the individual neighbors on that.
Okay. And were there many people in attendance or watching or speaking at the planning commission meeting?
At the planning commission meeting, I think there were 10 or 15 people in attendance. It was a Zoom meeting. So I don't know specifically how many people were, in there. We've subsequently have all our planning commission meetings in person with a hybrid Zoom option. But that meeting was our last Zoom only option meeting.
Okay.
There were some comments from our planning commission about it. Our planning commission was supportive of it. I believe they voted 4-0 to recommend approval to our board on this. And a number of the commissioners were discussing that, they thought that this was well needed in terms of ensuring that we had a consistent zoning designation that reflects what's going on in that section of Arboga Road, where it is more of a medium density residential neighborhood and not what we traditionally think of with single family residential.
Okay. Well, we did have some questions that were prompted by this. We've talked about what prompted this particular rezoning. Why this area? Why this specific area?
This specific area was chosen because we've had I might have mentioned it earlier. There've been a number of property owners or prospective buyers of properties on this section of road over the past year that have come to my department with the desire to add to do projects that added more units. And when we looked at the zoning, my staff brought it to my attention that the zoning wouldn't allow to do what they're doing. And so it took a little bit of investigation on our part to see what was actually out on the street. And given the interest from the public on doing a little bit more out there, we thought that this would fix an area that we might have missed what it should be zoned. And so it was a mix of it was originally brought to our attention by homeowners and potential people wanting to invest in the West Linda community. And then my staff started to dig down into it to see if this was something that was a larger issue that we should address on a countywide level. And we decided that it was an issue given that some of the points that you brought up about larger parcels, Arboga Road being an urban arterial road, and this existing section of Arboga having more of a medium density residential feel to it. We felt like this was something that we should bring as a countywide change to the Board of Supervisors. Ted, I can't hear you right now. I don't know what's going on.
Wait a minute. I had myself muted. Okay.
Okay.
We're getting
Sorry,
used to doing
I
the
was
Zoom thing as an originator rather than just a watcher. So are there other areas in Yuba County that will also be similarly rezoned? If so, when and why?
At this point in time, we really haven't identified any other areas that we are seeking to rezone. You know, a little bit of history behind this kind of rezone process that we do here in Yuba County. In 2015, we updated it's our zoning ordinance, but we refer to it as our development code. We updated our development code, and as part of that process, we changed the zoning and, changed what we called our zoning categories for over 33,000 parcels in the county. And as part of that process, changing the zoning for 33,000 parcels is, we knew that we were going to make some mistakes or possibly, not address things correctly in certain areas. And so we got direction from our board to anytime we found a zoning error or an inconsistency in our zoning map from that large zoning change, that they wanted to bring it back to their board on an annual level. And this is the 2022 or 21 version of that. So that's what really was kind of the impetus of this.
So this is something this is something you could call a living document, meaning it's not static and it's not just going to be there like a wall plaque for 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I really appreciate you looking into the living document aspect of that and bringing that up. And because, Ted, like our development code before 2011 was last updated in 1983. And so the world in 1983 was completely different than, I said 2011, I meant 2015. But the world in 2015 was quite a bit different than the world in 1983. And so our board wanted to ensure that we never got ourselves in a situation where we had a 25-year-old development code that didn't reflect what was going on in our community on an everyday basis. And so they gave us direction to update that document to make sure it met consistency with state law and new planning trends on an annual basis.
So this is a part of that. Is this one of the first major in terms of the size of the rezoning project? Is this one of the first major efforts in that after that 33,000 lot rezone or
yeah, no, that's a great question. I wouldn't say it's one of the bigger zoning changes. In 2016 and 2017, we rezoned a number of parcels. It was, new and property owners kind of found out like, hey, why did this change? And so there were a number of parcels that we changed just from that first couple of years. But, since 2017, 2018, this is probably the bigger one that we've had in the last couple of years. Not, in the past, there was a bigger variety of areas in the county that we addressed these changes to. This is probably like a bigger neighborhood fit on that. And Ted, to answer some of your questions, yes, you are correct that it does go down into South Gledhill. I think South Gledhill is the boundary on that section. Moving forward, and North Gledhill as well. Hey Ted, I think you're still muted.
Okay, thank you. I think I've seen some parcels that are along some of the streets that run off of Arboga to the west, J Street, K Street, Fleda. It would be good if property owners looked up their lot by address on the county assessor's website to check and see or compare against the list that's going to be rezoned. And that list is available. We'll have a link to that in our accompanying text information along with this particular live stream that we're not live streaming at the moment, but the recording that we'll put up. So do you know how many lots, homes, acres are involved here?
Again, I believe that the number is about 140 lots. The actual acreage of that, I will give to you in 1 second. Give me 1 second. I will get you kind of a
magic of computers, the internet, and
let me.
So as you're doing this, you might describe for people what exactly is the software able to do here.
So Google Earth is a really fabulous application, and they have a lot of different tools that could be used on a lot of different, measuring parcel sizes. And what I have right now, which some people might not have or go, hey, what are those yellow lines? And so what the yellow lines are basically, it's a parcel boundary of all the parcels in the county. And we have this information, the parcel boundaries drawn in a GIS format, which is a geographic information systems format. GIS has been around for a number of years, and we basically overlay the GIS parcel layers onto the Google Earth, and it allows us to use tools in Google Earth by parcel boundary. So it's pretty cool. I have been a big fan of it for probably the last 8 years of my career here at Yuba County.
I imagine it makes your job a little bit easier and quicker.
Oh yeah. So look at this. You asked me a question, and within like 2 minutes, I can tell you that roughly we're looking at around 60 acres of land that would be changed in this rezone.
Okay, 60 acres. I mean, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it gives some people an idea of the size of Linda.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'll just do a quick, if you want to kind of get an idea of how big West Linda is, and I'll define West Linda as the area west of Highway 70 and
north of Pasado and Erle Road, north of Pasado and Erle.
I'll give you a good idea of what we're looking at.
So you're including basically the area that the fire department covers, it looks like, over there.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're looking like, West Linda is about, give or take, 580 acres.
Okay. That's interesting to know. We'll come back to you for more data on other parts of the county. You could do a little training session on how to use Google Earth.
Absolutely. If you or anyone listening to your show has any questions about, that spur off of anything that I've done today, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd gladly, like to go over and explain things further to your audience if they have questions. One of the things that I've really wanted to do as part of being the planning manager here at Yuba County is to make what we do more accessible to the public, and to describe and be thorough and explain what the development process is and what goes in it, and why we do what we do. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and answer these questions. They're really great questions, and I appreciate that our community has Yuba-Sutter.LIVE to be able to do these types of things.
So what's the assessed value of the land involved? Do you have an easy way of coming up with that information?
No, I don't know what that is. The assessed value of the land won't change as part of this rezone. The assessed value will only change if someone adds, does improvements to their property.
Okay. So that could be a sale to somebody that puts up multifamily.
Yeah. So if you own your property and you have your single family residential house on it, by the zoning change, it's not gonna change the assessed value of your home because the zoning changes. What will change is if you do improvements to your house, or you add a structure to your house, or if someone buys a vacant lot and improves that and puts two duplexes on that, then of course that will be assessed at a higher value.
It's also, you look at the size, if you zoom in there, you look at the size of the lots, and they can handle 2 or 3 standard sized houses, or might be able to do something more if you did multi-story. In fact, right where your pointer was, go to the right a little bit, whoops, right there. That's an example of a vacant lot that is one of the larger ones. And it looks like somebody's been using it as a racetrack.
Yeah, right.
Not exactly a permitted use in a single-family residential area.
So yeah, so this parcel's just about an acre in size. I just measured it, and you know, right now, traditionally, before SB 9 and before you know, with the current single-family residential zoning district, you have an acre of parcel that would only be able to have one house on it. And
so that's a 1 acre parcel?
It's basically about a 1 acre parcel. It might be a little short of 1 acre, but you know, again, this is just something that our goal with this rezone is to make it easier for development, infill development, and investment in our West Linda region by, you know, instead of just having one parcel or one house up here, we might now have the ability to have, you know, multiple houses, and the full side of this parcel be utilized.
And you'd in the process of dealing with permits and plans and things like that, you'd also make sure that there was access to the back of the property and things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also that neighbors.
We review all of that as part of our building permit review process.
And also that neighbors were not finding themselves with their bedroom 5 feet from a driveway that gets a lot of use.
Exactly.
Okay. So
we would, on something like this, we would encourage the developer to, if someone were to develop this and wanting to put, you know, more units on it, to have the driveway, you know, most likely in the middle of the parcel, opposed to on the southern end of the parcel, which is closer to, you know, the existing single family residence on that side. So that's, you know, those are the types of things that we encourage as part of the building permit process, is just trying to make sure that what goes on is you know, works for everyone in the neighborhood, and not just one person.
Okay. So it is, as more infill development, which is the term that you've been using, happens over time, and this isn't going to happen tomorrow, or you know, it may take, who knows, 5, 10, 15, 20 years at the rate things seem to go, for a lot of these things to be taken advantage of, and some people may not want to do that. But do you have any predictions or any way of accurately predicting how the land uses could change with this change in zoning? How many people might take advantage of this? I'm
really glad that you brought that question up, because that's one thing that I was planning on doing on this, is to, you know, we have the ability with GIS and our computer software system that tracks like development related permits and whatnot. One of the goals that I'm going to have, if the board agrees to rezone these properties, is, you know, it is our plan to see what goes on this. If this does help increase the number of new units in a region, or you know, does aid in more investors or developers interested in adding more housing units in the area, that's something, you know, the metrics part of that is something that we do plan on tracking on this, if the changes then does get approved, because, you know, it's important to know, and you know, frankly, if this is something that works and it doesn't have a negative outcome on it, you know, it might be something that we look to do in different areas in our urbanized areas.
So do you know off the top of your head how much property tax or other revenue is currently generated and how that could change as a result of the proposed shift to medium density residential?
No, I don't know that off the top of my head. It's a good question. We haven't done that level of analysis.
But that is something that obviously you'd have to kind of estimate how many lots might change into something. It's just a little hard to predict.
We might have to create a lot of assumptions on that to figure something out like that. But again, my goal is, my goal, and I believe the county supervisor's goal is to, help with reinvestment in our existing West Linda, in other areas, Linda, all of First communities, and making, the process easier for more housing to be done. One of the things that, I don't want to sidetrack this discussion, but I think one of the important discussions in terms of development, investment in West Linda, is, there's an existing housing project that's getting built on a property that the county used to own just south of Cedar Lane Elementary School.
Right. Why don't you go ahead and zoom in on
Feather River
that?
Boulevard. It's effectively a $60 million investment into the West Linda region. It's going to add 150 units of affordable housing, and it's going to see the roads of Feather River Boulevard from Garden, Arboga to Alicia Avenue completely redone with curb gutter sidewalks, bike lanes, a storm drain system. Alicia Avenue from Feather River Boulevard to Cedar Lane, same, full,
Go ahead and zoom in and use your
I'll
pointer
zoom in
when you
and
do that.
show. So, following my pointer, it's going to be, and again, all these improvements are going to be curb gutter sidewalk, bike lanes, and storm drain facilities. The exciting part about this, for our public works department and community development in general, is this is the first true stormwater and sidewalk project in West Linda. And so, this is kind of the start of what we're looking to do and, grow off of in all of West Linda, and, move down into Olive First and in areas of Linda that don't have it as well. But the section we're talking about, first of all, the housing project is right here on this parcel, right here, Cedar Lane Elementary School. It's this vacant parcel right here. The county owned the parcel, and we entered into an agreement with Regional Housing Authority to develop this site with the affordable housing project. And so it's going to be 150 units here. And the roads that are going to get improved as part of this project are going to be Feather River Boulevard, following my mouth from Arboga Garden all the way to Alicia Avenue from Feather River Boulevard north to to Cedar Lane, excuse me. Cedar Lane, the entire length of Cedar Lane, so from Alicia to Garden, is going to be redone. And then the entire length of Garden Avenue, which would go from Feather River Boulevard up to effectively the levee that exists right here. All of that road will be redone with, curb gutter sidewalk, bike lanes, and storm drain facilities. So, again,
$60 million investment by the county, using some county funds, but a lot of grant money, as I recall.
Yeah, there's grant money, and then there's also private investment from on the apartment complex. There's private capital on that as well.
And how many residential units there, accommodating how many people?
There'll be 150 residential units. 41 of them will be mainly like a supportive housing project, which will be about will be more one bedroom, one bath, and then there'll be 108 family units that will be a combination of 2-2s and 3-2s.
Okay. So West Linda is getting improvements, and I think what you're trying to say is that with this rezoning, there's the potential for creation of value that would lead to improvements that can follow down along the Arboga Road corridor between Feather River Boulevard and Pasado Road and Erle Road. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, and that's our intention is to try to help allow more residential flexibility and more investment into that community.
So what changes to county policies, practices, services, and costs are going to be needed in the short term and the long term to address any construction that might take place? Will, for example, the planning department need more staff? Will as things actually mature or come to pass and completion, will we need more law enforcement? Will the Linda County Water District need more sewage capacity, need more water provision, wells, or whatever it is that they may ultimately turn to? That kind of thing.
Yeah, those are good questions. In terms of staffing, at least for community development, this shouldn't affect any of our workload any more than what we have right now. We're a pretty lean, mean, efficient machine over here at Yuba County Community Development. So I can't imagine this is going to, even assuming full build out at full, residential capacity is, I don't think it's going to have much impact on a county staffing level, or even for the sheriff's department. A lot of times, a lot of the bigger impact that we get is when you start to see development go from, this is all infill, which is the type of stuff we want because all the services are in place, opposed to, maybe something like, creating over here. Let me take off the zoning
an existing rice field to the east of the former SP tracks out in the middle of
so like,
south of Erle Road.
If or when this is Erle Road right here, if or when this area ever develops, this is really like this kind of big massive project is really the type of project that could affect our sheriff's department and could affect Linda County Water and OPUD or whatever whoever the service provider is in that area. It's these types of projects, which a project like this would frankly probably from start to finish take anywhere from 2 to 5 years to go through the planning process to ensure that we adequately address all project related impacts to water, sewer, sheriff's department, schools, like all that we have the property has the area has enough schools to accommodate the growth, and that there's not that there won't be a 10,000 new residents and no new schools. Like that's this would be more of the type of project that would have the type of impact that you're talking about. This rezone, frankly, I really I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I really hope that it makes it a better, easier place to add additional housing, or existing homeowners to be able to add new homes to their properties, or to be able to sell to someone who might be interested in developing it or doing more infill development. That I'm not as concerned about over here. But to your point, we do address that on bigger projects that aren't infill like this.
Okay. So Cedar Lane School might see over a period of time an increase in enrollment, depending on the ages of children or people that may move into some of the yet to be added properties or yet to be added residential structures. But this also does I guess, and this is maybe something for people to think about if they're impacted somehow by COVID, but they have property and the ability to get a construction loan to build something. It may provide some additional income over and above what it would take to do the construction and so forth, which could help the community in some ways. You're nodding your head.
Yes, that's a yes.
Okay. Any observations about that, or what that might, how many people might be in a position to take advantage of that?
I don't have that off the top of my head. It's a really good question, and I can follow up with you on that and get more specifics. Frankly, a lot of the questions that you're asking are really terrific, fantastic questions that I appreciate. And you know, it's my goal to have more metrics and to have more analysis in projects similar to this. And to get to that point, you know, there's a couple of constraints that we've had to get to that point. One has just been a staffing constraint. You know, up to this year, you know, in 2017, there was a portion in 2017 that I was the only planner in the Yuba County Planning Department. And, you know, I can proudly say that, you know, at this point in time, we have 4 planners, you know, specific planners that are assigned to planning department roles, which are great. And then also software system, being able to run, do analysis off of the data that we have in our software database. You know, it's been really difficult to do that. The software program that we currently have is unsupported by the software company, and we've spent the last year and a half in a process of switching software companies that we're hoping that will, you know, go live sometime this summer. And once that does go live, it'll give us a lot more in terms of being able to run different analysis with GIS programs and, you know, overlay different, you know, things that we have and information that we have that we haven't been able to do in the last, you know, geez, as long as I've been here 16 years in Yuba County. We haven't been able to do because of either staffing or software issues. And I think we're going to be able to solve both of those in 2022. So that's pretty exciting.
That's cool. And it sounds like you'll be able to do some what if questions and then get some answers and maybe deal with improving the quality of the planning based on the questions that you ask and the answers that you can get.
Yeah, and providing information that's, you know, information that we typically wouldn't be able to provide in the past.
Okay. Question. I had some questions for you and also for our supervisors who got you involved here. We've talked about increased law enforcement, fire and emergency services, schools. I notice over in the lower left-hand corner, there's the park that's on Alicia Avenue. Is the property that's just on the opposite side of Alicia, is that county owned?
Yeah, so the county, so this is what we call Cottonwood Park. You know, I think there might be some other names out there for it, but, you know, you can see right here, Cottonwood Park, it's located off of Alicia, but the county actually owns, you know, these 2 parcels just to the south. So if you took Cottonwood Avenue, and I don't know how familiar you are with Cottonwood, but there's you know, an existing community garden that exists.
I was going to say that looks like a community garden.
Yeah, it's you know, it's really fantastic. You know, I always get excited when I drive out on Cottonwood and see like how organized and you know what products come out of this community garden. You know, because, you know, roughly, let's look how big both of these parcels are combined.
And I noticed in a previous board meeting or planning commission meeting, there was some activity involving the parcels, the 2 parcels that are on the corner of Feather River Blvd and Cottonwood, next to the community garden.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to this parcel and this parcel here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you know, just there, you know, as part of the intention of the county to have a stormwater system in West Linda that hasn't existed before is, you know, we need to have a place where the water does go.
Okay.
And our public works department is working on a project where this section, they're not going to affect where the community gardens are, but this section that hasn't been affected or that doesn't have community gardens on it, our public works
been an old orchard for many years.
Yeah, and the public works department is looking to develop this with a I always forget the terms. I'm not an engineer. A detention or a retention.
Retention pond,
Yeah,
retains the water.
one detention detains the water, and one's short term and one's long term. And so, the goal is this is where the storm drain water would eventually go to in this area.
Okay.
I've been told by our Public Works Department that this area in West Linda is so sandy that they can't imagine the water is going to be able to stay for very much long periods of time.
Okay. And it might be usable as a park or something in the summertime when there's not likely to be stormwater coming in.
Yeah, that could be conceivable. I don't know if there's any plans on that at the current moment. I just know that our Public Works Department is looking to develop that section with a to handle the stormwater that comes out of the new road improvements.
One of the issues that comes up from time to time in discussions, particularly as summer approaches, is geez, we don't have a swimming pool in Linda. And when we moved here, my family brought us, my brother and I, up from Walnut Creek in the Bay Area in 1965, and we moved to Hamilton Road and Lyndhurst Avenue. And I remember we used to ride bicycles into the Marysville City swimming pool, which was then at 9th and B Streets, and then we'd ride home. Sometimes we'd ride into the theater, catch a movie, something like that. But there really has never been, with the exception of a short period of time where Yuba College out on North Beale Road opened its pool to the public, that we've actually had a swimming pool in Linda. And that comes up from time to time. And I'm curious to know, as a planner, where you think that might be, it might be a good location, or do we need two, perhaps? Maybe one in West Linda and one in East Linda somewhere on land that isn't currently being used for anything else.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, I do want to
stay out of
trouble
trouble
on my question, on my answer, that I've never thought about that. I've never thought about where a good location would be for a community pool in the Linda area, or this East Linda, West or East Linda area. I know right now there's, I think in the South County, there's the All-First pool, and I believe Wheatland's looking, they have some funding to build a community pool in Wheatland. But that discussion about something in either West Linda or more like the Edgewater, new part of or older part of Linda, that's a really great question. And I know parks, at least like in any district that let me take a step back. So OPUD manages parks in All-First and Plumas Lake. Outside of All-First and Plumas Lake, the county maintains parks, and there's a parks and landscape coordinator in our Public Works Department that is kind of the lead on the parks. And so I haven't really had that discussion with them, but I'm thinking maybe if that's something that and again, there's been no talks internally, and I have never thought about this question, but just off the top of my head, maybe somewhere north of Yuba College, there's an area right up here that I know Marysville Joint Unified School District owns, that they were looking to use as a school site and or like a bus depot, right here. And maybe it makes sense to have like a regional park or something else around in this area that was close enough to public transportation on North Beale Road, and it would be able to be able
or safe enough for kids to ride bicycles too, without having to be driven or supervised.
Yeah, exactly. And I know Public Works has been doing a lot of road improvement projects along North Beale to improve the safety aspect of that corridor. And maybe, and I think the one of the last legs of the project is going to start here in 2022. So maybe this could be an area in over through here that made sense for bicyclists and public transportation to be able to bring kids to the site. But I haven't had any discussions on that.
Well, maybe this is something that would start you thinking about where you might do that.
It really has. I super appreciate the question.
Well, and I'm happy to ask them. I've had the opportunity to keep an eye on what's been going on in the area since 1965 and actively engaged in news since the early 70s. And there's a lot of things that people seem to raise as complaints about. Oh, gee, we used to have this, that, and the other thing. We've never had any kind of swimming pool access in Linda, and it is one of the things that people seem to want and might support. Maybe there is some ongoing funding once it got built to keep that going as the Sycamore Park becomes profitable or remains profitable, and you take the profit from that and reinvest it in another part of the community and help improve not just the quality of life for everybody that lives there, but also for people that may decide that this is an affordable or a reasonable area for them to locate their families in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of sort of getting to the end of this particular series of questions. As the planning department and as the county, you don't exactly have the ability to say, oh, you have to provide this kind of power here, there, and where have you, or telecommunications, but you do have the ability to influence that. What do you see going forth with the type of rezoning that's going on in this West Linda project? That needs to be addressed with the various potential service providers or existing service providers to make sure that we've got the power that's needed for development, that we have the telecommunications infrastructure, particularly as things seem to be moving more in the direction of wireless, perhaps using cell phone services instead of wired connections.
Yeah, it's a really good question. You know, the power is something that we don't really get involved with the planning department. PG&E, you know, controls that. We do notify PG&E of projects, and you know, they've never, in all the discussions we've had with PG&E, they've never indicated that they were, you know, at all at an issue of, or like that they didn't have enough capacity for power. So so that hasn't really been an issue that we've addressed in, you know, the 15, 16 years that I've been here at Yuba County Planning. We haven't really had to deal with that. But I feel like the next question is a really germane question about the telecommunications, and I'm really glad that
before we get off of power for a moment, because of the fact that the power that is generally provided in Yuba County, whether it's urbanized or it's up in the foothills, is overhead lines. What can the county do to improve the safety of electricity in the area and also reduce the number of and necessity for power shutoffs during windstorms or potential fire hazards? And that can occur in the urbanized area because we've seen it happen.
Yeah, so you know, I'm not an expert on any of the, you know, power safety stuff, and I don't want to act like I'm an expert on that. But you know, one of the things that I can talk to you about that we require in new subdivisions and in some new projects are that, you know, power is underground. Like so you know, on the new subdivisions that you'd see in East Linda or North Arboga or Plumas Lake regions, the county does have development standards that do require that power is underground. And so, you know, that's there. You know, we do have those types of standards for the larger scale new developments. But, you know, to get into the more, you know, granular, smaller stuff, I don't know. I don't think we have standards on that. And I don't really want to answer a question on safety that, you know, I just don't know the answer.
That's all right. Valid reason for saying I don't have the answer to that. And I appreciate that. I mean, there are a lot of questions that sometimes just flat out don't have answers, but posing the question may help get them. And
absolutely.
Also,
and, you know, I do think that, you know, one of the things that I've enjoyed about our dialogue this afternoon is there are a lot of questions that have been asked that you know have, you know, piqued my interest, and I'm like, oh wow, you know, like I really want to know a little bit more about that. So, you know, I do appreciate question asking And to your point, yes, like there's been a couple of things that I'm going to look up after and try to get more information on after we end our call.
Well, let me know when you have some answers and maybe some comprehensive graphics or something that can help illustrate that.
So
I know
I can't answer about telecommunications if you'd want me to.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so the county actually has been doing quite a bit of work on telecommunications and specifically broadband and making sure that we understand where we're at right now with our broadband infrastructure and broadband needs and what we need to do moving forward. And
let's define what's meant by broadband for people that may not be familiar with the term.
Broadband would be high-speed internet, or I believe the state defines broadband as like 25 megabits of download and 3 megabits of upload. I could be wrong on my numbers, but
that seems about right in terms of what I've heard in research.
Yeah,
the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, which deals with interstate kinds of things, they also have defined it at least at that point. But I think that may be going up, particularly as we see more use of handheld devices and landlines for video streaming and more kinds of uses than maybe had been anticipated when 25.3 was the rule.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that could be fiber, that could be wireless through cell towers, or there's a lot of different ways to deploy that. And frankly, Ted, where I was going to go with this, and I'll do a little backstory. But our board saw the need to be from both an economic development standpoint and mostly it came out of COVID. So there was a couple of things. It didn't come out of COVID. It happened pre-COVID. We were looking at it, but COVID really exacerbated the situation. The county wants to look at broadband as potentially an infrastructure, same as roads, sewer, water, et cetera, et cetera. And we want to make sure that we have the proper infrastructure for successful deployment of broadband throughout the county. And it's needed for different reasons in different areas of the county. In our foothill and more rural areas, it's a safety issue that that there's not the best way to there's not really a way to communicate with people. The internet's really slow up there. There's some areas that are non-existent. So by improving accessibility to our foothill region, it'll allow for more emergency messages to be able to go to people. It could allow people to work from home a little bit more, do teleschool, telemedicine. As I was mentioning, COVID did exacerbate some of these issues in different areas of our county because people couldn't go to the doctor. They had to go schedule an appointment to DMV online, and they don't. How do you schedule an appointment with DMV if you can't have if you don't have internet at all to your house? And even our conversation today, like there've been a couple of times where I've noticed my audio go out a bit because of this conversation, and it affected people working from home. And so one of the things that the county supervisors have done is they hired a broadband project manager, and so we have a new employee. He's actually in the planning department, who his sole job is to work on broadband issues for the county and to address how and what we're going to do more moving forward in terms of improving our broadband infrastructure and broadband speeds to residences. And so far, we have gone through and got kind of our first project done. We had someone create like a visioning document, or kind of like not a visioning document, but like a plan that showed different areas where we don't have broadband, where we need broadband, what the speeds were in different areas, and other types of ordinances that we could put in place to make it more streamlined process for broadband going in. So we do have a broadband project manager that is looking at all those issues. And so this area is something that, you know, we will be addressing to ensure that it does have the proper infrastructure to have high-speed internet provided in this area. And one piece of you know, offer that I'll have for you is, you know, if you ever want to interview or talk with our broadband project manager, his name's Ian Scott, and I can arrange that. You know, he's a wealth of knowledge, and I think both you know, Ted, you and him, the two of you would hit it off and have a really fruitful conversation. You're on mute, Ted. Ted, you're on mute right now.
Yes, and I'm also sort of disappearing over here, I can see. This is when you're dealing with technology and you're kind of, this is one of our first uses of green screen here, and I've got sunlight coming in over there, I've got overhead lighting, I've got a bunch of different things that I need to fix. It's not that I'm just a ghost here, folks. But yeah, and I look forward to having some further conversations with you as things.
Oh, I gladly would have, you know, any topic you want to have, just, you know, reach out to me and we'll schedule some time to talk further on.
Cool. All right. Well, anything else that we've left out of this conversation that you think is essential for people to know about? Either what's happening specifically in West Linda with this, or some other things that may be coming up on the horizon that people may not be aware of?
Yeah, you know, I don't really know so much. You know, I think that we've been pretty comprehensive on the rezone, but, you know, maybe you know, I think that you took part in a discussion that Supervisor Bradford had on commercial development in the Plumas Lake region, and, you know, maybe that's something, you know, if there's any topics that your viewers have on, you know, just kind of wanting to go through and know what we kind of have, you know, what we've heard or what's planned where, you know, I'd gladly, you know, spend an hour or so going over where we have approved subdivisions, what those subdivisions look like, and what, you know, if the development world continues at the pace that it's currently going at, what you would look at, you know, 3, 5, 10 years from now in, you know, areas of West Linda, Olivehurst, North Arboga, and the Plumas Lake community. I'd love to have that conversation with you if you or any of your viewers have anything specific you want to talk about.
Yeah, I think they'd like to do that. We could set up a little town hall meeting. I'm going to start a program. This might be one of the first ones in it. We have a couple other things that we have on tap. Something called Lunch with Langdell, and it doesn't necessarily have to take place at a restaurant. Could be like this, depending on what people's schedules are like, and it would be happening during the lunch hour.
Right,
anyway,
perfect.
We appreciate you taking your lunch, because I know you've got a 2 o'clock
meeting.
Yeah,
I gotta go run and get something really quickly to eat. I'm out of water and my blood sugar is plummeting. So.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's approaching 1:30 on Monday afternoon here, and we do appreciate your help here and showing us, talking to us, filling us in on information, and giving us a better idea about what's happening with this rezoning project in West Linda.
Well, Ted,
that's our conversation with Yuba County Planning Director Kevin Perkins, recorded earlier today, about rezoning the Arboga Road corridor in West Linda. Again, the public hearing is during the 9 a.m. meeting right here at the Yuba County Government Center, Tuesday, January 25th, 2022, right here at 8th and J Streets in Marysville. We'll have it live right here on Yuba-Sutter.LIVE. The public can attend, comment, and ask questions during the public hearing. You can also participate by Zoom. Links to the agenda, the meeting, and other relevant materials are at the bottom of the text you see by scrolling down below the video. If this program has been helpful to you, or you regularly watch our government live streams and our community events like the upcoming Bach High Parade or other parades we've done at the fireworks or a variety of other things that we do, consider please becoming a member, a subscriber, or a sponsor. You can go to Yuba-Sutter.LIVE/support and help keep reports like this and the fun stuff happening right here on Yuba-Sutter.LIVE, our Facebook channel, our website, and our YouTube channel. Your Contributions will be recognized in our programming. Thanks again for watching. We hope this has been helpful to you. At the Yuba County Administration Center in Marysville, I'm Ted Langdell. Yuba-Sutter.LIVE.